Like, comment, share, subscribe. Thanks for watching.
Welcome to part 2 of the Ruby Frank and Jody Hildebrandt case. If you haven't seen part 1, be sure to check it out. Many of the facts in this case may be disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. When we left off in part 1, Ruby and Jody were both taken into custody and booked into jail.
Prior to their arrest, both women maintained a social media presence which centered around mental health and parenting advice. Ruby Frank gained social media fame shortly after her and her estranged husband, Kevin Frank, started their YouTube channel 8 Passengers in 2015.
Jody Hildebrandt was an author, life coach, and the founder of the Connections Classroom 101. The core teachings of Connections is that for a person to achieve true connection with another human being, they must not be in distortion. Distortion is a broad term defined by Jody. By taking her course, people learn they are in distortion by the following: being addicted, spouse, work, shopping, electronic games, sleep, social media, driving, receiving compliments, exercise, eating, drugs or alcohol, sex, pornography, hobbies, entertainment. The things you can become addicted to are endless. Living in shame and denial, knowing you are not enough, being codependent in your relationships, living in lust, being sexually attracted to your spouse, controlling and manipulating others.
Welcome to the Empowering Joy class. I'm Jody Hildebrandt. I am sure you're here because you have a desire to heal, a desire to have joy in your life and connection in your relationships. I have that same desire, not only for myself, but also for you. And so I'm very aware that many people are coming and they feel like they can't figure out how to have those things: joy, connection, clarity. And the truth is that you can. Those of you who have been given a diagnosis, I want to tell you that your diagnosis is not who you are. It's not you. The truth is that you can change. You just need education. You need the correct education. You need to understand about the power of your agency and what your agency / your choice has the power to do. And that's where the Empowering Joy class comes in.
I know that I am not the only mom who has spent much of her time looking for a program or a class or some kind of curriculum that I could share with my child, where my child would easily understand and learn about their value and their potential and to inspire them. What I have found is Empowering Joy, and it is now a family favorite. The tradition is every Saturday we get up and we listen to Empowering Joy as we make breakfast together. It really sets the stage for the rest of the weekend. The changes that have occurred in my home have been calming. Because of Empowering Joy, my entire family now has a common vocabulary of words that we use with each other, that we know exactly what the other person means when they say them. We can communicate. But I guarantee you, you will find principles of joy in this class. At the end of each week, as I prepare for a new Saturday class, I'll take the slides off of the fridge and put them in a book. This provides my family with a book of principles and easy to understand visuals. This is literally the book on raising children that you have been looking for. And it is a great way to learn as a family, from mom and dad, the children, invite grandparents, your aunts and uncles to join, and then you have curriculum to discuss the rest of the week. I like to print out my slides and put them on the fridge, and then anytime the kids come home from school or come home from a play date or have an interaction that they're uncomfortable with, or maybe they're being disrespectful, I can go back to the visual and plug any experience into what we learned in a Saturday class. And the reason you can do that is because these are principles, and principles apply across the board in any situation.
I invite you to join me every Saturday to learn about principles of truth. The base being honest, responsible, and humble, and how you can use your choices to empower you to recognize distortion and recognize truth and reframe those distortions, those lies, back into what the reality is, back into the truth, so that your life can become calm. Your life will become clear and you will be able to have connection and peace. I'll see you on Saturday.
Jody Hildebrandt became a business partner of family YouTube blogger Ruby Frank. They launched a YouTube channel called Connections together in 2022 and created a joint Instagram account called Moms of Truth, offering parenting classes.
I'm going to review your Miranda rights before we start. We're just kind of ask you a few questions about your involvement. Okay? So, first, you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be held against you in the court of law. Okay? You have the right to an attorney or to have him or her present while questioning. If you cannot afford to hire one will be hired to represent you. If you decide to answer questions, you can stop at any time. Okay? Do you understand your rights?
I do.
Okay. Do you wish to speak to me now?
Well, I want to pick up my kids.
How about this? We're going to ask you some questions, and if you don't want to answer them, you just say, hey man, I'm not going to answer that.
Sure.
And
But to just say, hey, I'm not going to talk, that's not beneficial to you, and then we're done, you're nowhere, and we're nowhere, and
Sure.
you understand that, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so just for starters, what was your full name?
Kevin William Frankie.
How to spell that?
KEVINWILLIAMFRANKE.
And what's your date of birth address for you?
I'm not comfortable giving my address right now.
Okay. But you do live in Springville?
I do.
How long have you lived in Springville for?
I moved there in 2007 with my family, so
Okay.
was
And
that
how many-
17 years.
And how many kids do you have, Kevin?
I have 6 kids.
And what are their names?
Some of them are teenagers, 2 adults.
So are they all living with you, or
No, I haven't seen them for over a year.
any of them?
No, none of them.
For a year.
Over a year.
Okay.
I've been in a separation
From who?
from my wife and family.
What's your wife's name?
Ruby.
Ruby. When's the last time you saw Ruby?
The last time I saw her
Yeah.
was the 18th of this month. We met she requested me to sign over vehicles, or the titles to the vehicles, the vehicle that she drives, that were all in my name.
When's the last time you physically saw Russell or Eve?
The day that I moved out, July 24th, 2022.
24th of 2022.
I have to interject, because I'm sure a lot of you are wondering how a man has not seen his children for a little over a year. There have been other clients of Hildebrandt's that have come forward with their accounts of being influenced by Jody to leave their marriage. Check out this clip.
If I could begin with you, Brian, it's your whole family was treated by Jody Hildebrandt. Knowing what you've been through, and knowing now what she's been arrested for, were you the least bit surprised with the charges that she's facing?
I was surprised that she abused a child with duct tape and rope. But I'm not surprised by that she used that amount of control. She often said that children should not have privacy, children need to be controlled, children can't be trusted. I didn't think it would have led to abuse, but I almost wouldn't put it past her too.
Well, Spencer, you've just heard what your dad said. You saw Jody Hildebrandt when you were just 16 for the terrible crime of having a secret phone. Would you say that she would be capable of the crimes that she's charged with now, given the person that you got to know back then as a teenager?
Well, I never felt a good connection with her. She was like really cold and rude and never seemed like she really cared about me as a kid, especially compared to other better therapists I've had. So it's not very surprising, I guess. I mean, I didn't think she would
Spencer,
actually abuse, but sorry.
well, an abuse
Go
can
ahead.
come in so many ways, right? I mean,
Sure.
it can be physical,
Yeah.
it can be mental, and certainly
Yes.
hearing that she treated you with adults who had porn addiction and spoke openly about those kinds of things, as well as fantasies that should never be mentioned in front of a 16-year-old. What were some of those sessions like for you as a 21-year-old now looking back at your 16-year-old self?
Well, at the time, it was, especially because of how locked down things were at my house after we started therapy with Jody. It was like the first outside connection I had. So on that hand, it was interesting, a little bit entertaining sometimes to listen to these guys. But as an adult looking back at that now, it's horribly disturbing. I can't imagine answering the phone and hearing a squeaky little kid's voice and being like, yeah, I have a porn addiction, or, all of the conversations that I had. It was a 45-minute call every day for a few weeks with a different person each time.
Well, and honestly, Brian, looking back, I would think your blood would be boiling when you discovered some of the things that Jody had exposed your son to.
Absolutely. And I didn't know that my children were in sessions with Jody. I was separated from my wife and children with the line drawn in the sand that if I had any contact with my wife or children, my ex-wife would divorce me. And that was a rule by Jody. So I didn't know they were in therapy. When I finally threw the towel in and had contact with my kids and invited them over in the temporary space where I was living, found out what was going on, I told them all then, you're not going back to Jody. I don't want you to go back, and you don't have to if you don't want to. And they resoundingly, all three said, please, we don't want to go back.
As evident from past clients' experiences, Jody Hildebrandt would separate the husband and wife and keep them separate under the threat of divorce should the husband make any attempts to contact his family. I suspect that this was the case as it relates to Kevin Frank. Early on in their treatment, Jody suggested that Kevin needed to leave the marital home and not have contact with Ruby. During this separation period, Jody ensured that she inserted herself into every facet of Ruby Frank's life.
July 25th, Joy, July 25th.
So it's my understanding that at least home here in Kayenta and Ivans, have you been to that home?
No.
You've not been to that home?
No, I don't know. I don't know what's anything that's been going on.
Like, this is good, man. Like, I would love to be able to help you out with this, and like, I'm seeing the light of being in that home because I'm unaware of your involvement in what's really going on. So for you to say that you're unaware of the status of your kids kind of makes, I know that sounds kind of crummy to you, but it sounds kind of good to me. Like, who lives in that home with your, is it ex-wife? Is it currently a separated wife? Like, who lives in that home with your children?
To be honest, I don't know. I know that she's there with 4 of the children, and our 2 older children have moved out.
They're not at your home in Springville? And I'm not trying to trip you up. I can see you're hesitant to talk to me. I understand that.
Well, where I live, no,
Yeah.
I haven't seen them for over a year.
Okay. That's tough. I can only imagine how that feels, man. I got kids. And not have seen them for that long, that would tear a little piece of my heart out.
Of age to drive. Does she drive?
I don't know.
Okay.
Like I said, I know nothing is going on
So-
in their lives or anything going on.
How did you find out that you needed to come here to 55 North Main Street?
I received a message that I needed to come pick up my kids from the police department in Highlands.
And who was that message from?
Well, I'd prefer not to say right now.
It would just help us a lot.
I'm trying to figure out who reached out to you because it makes sense that would happen. I'm just not aware of anyone who did that from our department.
Right. And And I'm not comfortable saying right now who reached out to me.
Okay.
Okay.
So you haven't seen any of your kids in over a year, you said?
That's correct.
And then how old last time you saw her? How old is she now?
15.
She's 16. Okay. And then when all the kids left, Ruby took all of them?
Yeah, she stayed in the house and I moved out.
Okay. And did you ever try to reach out to the kids, drop by the home, or
No.
was
I
there?
honored the no separation boundary that we agreed to.
So what
Or
was
no
your separation?
contact boundary, excuse me.
Did you have a no contact order in place?
Order? No, this was between my wife and I.
So what did Ruby ask of you when you separated?
What did she ask of me?
Did she ask you not to contact the kids?
Ruby invited me to leave the home while I thought about the choices that I've made in my life and the way that I've treated her.
Okay.
And so I left.
And how long had you and Ruby been married before?
We were married in 2000.
So about 22 years?
When we separated, we were going on 22 years. Yes.
Okay. And during your marriage, how was disciplining your kids? How would you discipline your kids?
I'm not going to answer that question.
Okay, that's fine.
Have you been since separated or since they lived here in the city of Ivins? Have you communicated with your wife regarding like discipline with your kids or their care or their physical well-being?
No.
So is she doing this on her own and just telling you how your kids are?
She's not telling me anything about the kids.
Who's this female Jody that your wife lives with? Do you know a female named Jody?
She is a therapist and a life coach, I know. And she's...
Do you respect her?
Do I respect her? Yeah, I think she's a very honest, truthful person, yes.
Okay. You place value on Jody?
I don't know what that means.
Like, do you value what she says and how she treats? Is your wife a client of hers? Is your wife a partner of hers? Is your wife a roommate with her? Your kids are living in her house is what I'm trying to say.
I'm not aware of that, but I know that they've been in business for the last year filming.
Who's they?
Ruby and Jody. They
Ruby
film
and Jody have been in business.
podcasts, and so every week a podcast goes up and I listen to it.
What's the name of it?
Connections with an X.
Like CON.
CONNEXIONS. Yeah.
And then, like, do you support them in that role and doing that and having?
Do I support them in the business?
Yeah, like do you support them and think that what they're doing is a good thing, or?
Yeah, I support their business efforts. I think it's a good thing.
Are you involved with their business efforts, or?
No.
Okay. So just Ruby and Jody. No
In
Kevin.
the business?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And were you involved in the 8 passengers account with your family?
Yes. I was in the videos, if that's what you mean.
I briefly learned about this 2 hours ago.
So did Ruby more so do the videos for the family? And how long did you guys do that for?
She started the channel in 2015, and as far as I'm aware, from the time I left, the last video she uploaded was towards the end of 2021.
Okay.
And I'm not aware of anything she's done since our separation. I don't visit 8 passengers anymore.
Chapter of your life that's gone.
It's a past chapter, yeah.
So how do you and Ruby communicate? Just through text, phone call?
Through text, and if there's anything considered an emergency, we agreed that we would communicate through a phone call.
Okay. And do you know her phone number off the top of your head?
The top of my head? No.
Okay. No worries. So, how often would you guys communicate while she was down here?
Well, I don't know how often or long she was down here. We've communicated maybe 4 times in 2023 since January.
So are you aware of how she disciplines the kids or how she handles
No,
the kids with behavioral issues or anything like that?
no,
So you're unaware of how she does that?
yes,
Okay. Are you aware of the physical condition of your children?
no. No, I've chosen to trust my wife with the children. That was part of the agreement of our separation.
Is that you allow her to physically provide for the needs of the child? You're just removed from that? I mean, you pay support. I know this is personal questions, but
Yes, my job is to financially provide for them.
I'm just trying to figure out like how much of a role do you play in the caretaking of specifically, is it?
I pay the bills.
Okay.
With my job, I provide the money, goes into a shared bank account, and that's my only involvement.
Okay. There's a whole bunch of things I want to talk to you about, but I still can't get over the fact that someone notified you to come here to pick up your kids. My guess is, was that Jody?
I'm not going to answer that question.
Okay.
All I'll say is,
Well,
someone
you said you
notified
trusted
me.
her. You said that you think that she's not necessarily. I asked you if you placed value on her, but you obviously.
She is an honest, I know her to be an honest and a trustworthy individual. And so, yeah, I trust her. And I received a communication that and so I left immediately from my job and drove down here. That's all I know. I've come to pick up my kids and to take them home with me.
Do you have any? Is there custodial paperwork that says that you're like a? There's no custodial paperwork denying you of rights, correct?
There's no custodial paperwork at all.
Period. So the kids are yours.
They are mine.
Okay.
Legally, yes. This was just a verbal agreement between my wife and I when we separated last year.
What questions do you have?
Oh, I want to know what's going on and why I was asked to come down and pick up my 2 kids.
Well,
And a lot of that kind of hinges on who asked you, because if we had been the one, like, I'm not going to say you fib, but I'm confident a cop didn't call you because we wouldn't have wanted you down here at this point in our investigation. So, having said that, I think it's time we be honest with you, right?
Sure. No, and I didn't lie.
You're
Someone contacted me, but I don't want to
You said
say
someone
without.
from your office, but okay.
Well, I don't recall saying someone from my office.
Our office.
No.
someone, yeah, so we don't know who called you. So
That's right.
if we knew who called you, then we could help you,
It would make more sense.
but
Well, I don't know the legal ramifications of implicating individuals who contacted me, and so without a lawyer here, I don't want to answer that question.
that's okay.
I
But
appreciate
you want to know specifics of the case, which we can't share right now because it's under investigation. So
I see.
yeah, so we would like to ask questions about where you found out, but we'll respect that if you don't want to share that information. But I am curious, when you guys had the previous 8 Passengers YouTube channel, you guys got a lot of heat for neglect and child abuse. A lot of people commented those things on there. Why were they commenting those things?
That's a good question. We had a son who was acting out in very selfish behavior.
Just Chad or
Yes, this was Chad. And none of this is strange or odd. You could get on YouTube and find out all sorts of stuff on this.
It's like a double-edged sword.
Whereas the question is, what do you believe, right? There was even an article written in Newsweek magazine in 2020 on it, was it Newsweek? No, Business Insider, where we were interviewed, and we were pretty straightforward, and we talked about it, and we shared our piece in that. Basically, it boils down to he was being very cruel and mean to his siblings that he shared a room with, and so we removed him from the room. And we said, you can sleep anywhere you want. Sleep on the couch, sleep on the pull-out bed, sleep on the floor for all we care, but you're not sleeping in that room with your brother. He chose to sleep on a beanbag. So 9 months later, he had made a lot of changes in his life. And he was ready to, and we had moved by that time. And so we had a new house, and he was ready to move into his own bedroom. Made a video about it. And in the video, he mentioned something to the effect of, I've been sleeping for 9 months on a beanbag. And that is what all the uproar was about.
What did you guys do to help, like, with his behavioral issues? Is that something you and Ruby talked about together? And then did you help him discover yourself and fix behavioral issues and things like that? Is that something you and Ruby sought out to help correct, like, some of the things?
Yes, and
okay.
And I supported it, and so together we held boundaries for our son Chad to support his choosing honest and responsible choices. And when he chose honest and responsible choices consistently is when he began to get his privileges back. And that was
parenting, right?
Well, that was the uproar, right?
Yeah.
And so, but yes, through 2000, contact with him because I'm honoring the no contact separation boundary with that I agreed to with my wife. But I understand that he's 18, living on his own somewhere in Provo and working and supporting himself.
What other kids went down to visit Jody?
What other kids?
Yeah, did you send any of the other kids down to spend time with Jody?
We didn't send Chad down to spend time with Jody. They would meet on Zoom.
That makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah, we were in Springfield. Well, even in 2019, she would meet with Chad.
So when did Ruby and Jody, to your knowledge, like, decide to collaborate, come together and mesh lives? Because that's what's happened.
Well, they decided to start a business in 2021.
So while you and Ruby were together.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, but there were, at that period it was pretty nebulous. I don't know.
What's that word mean?
It was just a lot of talk, and there weren't like solid plans. It was, let's start by doing podcasts together, and then that's all I know. I know that they published a book together recently. You can find it on Amazon. It's not a secret.
Was business thriving? Like, life was good between those two?
Well, not that I was aware.
Well, at some point, and again, I'm not digging into your life, but I'm trying to understand this. At some point,
We took,
they kick you out.
when you talk about a business, thriving in terms of business and money, when we stopped 8 passengers in YouTube, we lost 90% of our income. So to say that business was thriving, in my perspective, no.
Got it.
I don't think it ever was after that.
Was that part of your guys' reason for separation after you guys ended 8 passengers.
Was that part of the reason? The reasons are because of ways that I treated my wife, and some of my own addictions that I was working through and seeking help on with pornography.
Thank you for sharing that.
And I've made some wonderful progress.
Like, is that something you came to the realization that you needed help and weren't doing things right, or is that something that like Jody helped you guys recognize that maybe Ruby needed more? I'm trying to understand her involvement in your guys' life. She's my focus, just to be honest.
I understand, and I can perceive that. Jody and Ruby have a close relationship, and Jody saw the need for me to get help, and frankly, I agree. The space has been exactly what I need to face, my own addictions and receive the support and help that I've needed. And so this space has been very, very good for me.
Mm-hmm.
So when you stated that you and Ruby had this no contact that you guys just verbally agreed upon, was that an idea given by Jody that she recommended you guys have that space and not contact one another?
I'm not aware of that. The invitation for me to leave and take space was from my wife.
Okay.
But that was while Jody and Ruby were friends and collaborating and doing podcasts and
Sure.
Well, you're the custodial parent of these children. I don't see why we can't explain to you why we're involved. So I don't recall the exact time, but sometime before 11 o'clock today, we received a phone call from 911 on our dispatch that a 12 to 13-year-old boy was knocking on doors in a neighborhood asking for food and water, that he was severely emaciated, that he had...
What does emaciated mean?
Skinny, scrawny, malnutritioned, not enough food, not enough water to sustain life. So he had...
I'm sorry, what?
He had duct tape on his extremities, on his hands, on his ankles, and those were covering rope burns that were used to tie him down. Take a second and think about what I just said. That's the condition of your son. Given that information, your son was taken to the hospital. A warrant has been applied and granted by the Department of Child and Family Services to remove. So no one right now is going to have access to these two children based on their physical condition. Do you understand that?
I understand.
Would you condone that behavior?
Would I condone that behavior?
That's my job. My job is to find out your knowledge of the treatment of these
based on your
precious
description,
children.
no. But again, I don't know the details, or I don't know what's going on. But as you described that sounds
Horrible. Disgusting. No human being should be treated like that.
Okay.
That's my thoughts. But again, we might be different on that. We're going to let you sit here for a second, okay? We're going to go out and talk.
Over the next 6 months, disturbing details about the abuse Kevin's youngest children endured at the hands of their mother and Hildebrandt emerged. In December 2023, Ruby pleaded guilty to 4 counts of aggravated child.
Good morning. Welcome to District Court. We're here in the matter of State of Utah versus Frankie, case number 231501764. Mr. Winward is here representing Ms. Frankie. Let's bring her out. And Mr. Clark and Mr. Sham are here representing the State of Utah. Ms. Frankie is now here. Mr. Winward, we are scheduled for a waiver hearing. Is there going to be a waiver today?
There will, plus a plea agreement, Your Honor.
All right.
I'll ask the bailiff to hand you if it's been executed.
All right. Mr. Winward, you have discussed with Ms. Frankie a preliminary hearing, what's involved in a preliminary hearing. She understands she has a right to a preliminary hearing on all of the charges in the case. She understands what the charges are, and she's prepared to waive a preliminary hearing in the case on all charges.
She is, and that is contained in this agreement on page 7 as well.
Very good. All right, I've been handed a plea agreement, and it appears to be signed by Ms. Frankie. Ms. Frankie, did you sign this agreement?
Yes.
And you did that today? When did you sign it?
The 18th.
Okay. You've read it carefully?
Every word.
Your signature represents to the court that you've read it carefully, that you understand what you've read, and that you agree to all of the terms. Is that all accurate?
Yes.
You've had sufficient time to ask questions of your counsel, to go over any questions you have. You're ready to go forward.
Yes.
You don't need any more time.
I'm ready.
Ms. Frankie, is anyone pressuring you to enter into this agreement?
No.
Anyone promising you anything I haven't been told about?
No.
Anything that's not in the written plea agreement?
No.
Are you under the influence of alcohol or drugs today?
No.
Is there anything today that could in any way interfere with your ability to understand the agreement, its consequences, anything?
No.
No physical condition, no medication, nothing?
No.
Any further record, counsel?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Winward, we ready to proceed?
We are ready to proceed.
All right, then. Ms. Frankie, how do you plead to count 1, aggravated child abuse, a second-degree felony?
Guilty.
To count 3, aggravated child abuse, a second-degree felony?
Guilty.
To count 5, aggravated child abuse, a second-degree felony?
Guilty.
And to count 6, aggravated child abuse, a second-degree felony?
With my deepest regret and sorrow for my family and my children, guilty.
There is a factual basis set forth in the agreement that is a stipulated factual basis, counsel?
That's correct, Your Honor. That is correct, Judge Walton.
The court finds that the factual basis is sufficient. All of the terms of the agreement are stipulated, including that the court obtain a pre-sentence investigation report, correct?
Correct.
There won't be any argument about whether prison is the appropriate sentence, and there's an agreement about the 4 counts running consecutive.
That is correct.
All right. The court finds then that Ms. Frankie's pleas are made knowingly and voluntarily. The court therefore accepts and enters those pleas. The court orders the preparation of a pre-sentence investigation report to be prepared by AP&P and the Department of Corrections. Counsel, what about sentencing on February 20th? I think, do you and your client agree to waive time, counsel?
We do agree to waive time, Your Honor.
February 20th, I believe, is a Tuesday. Is that right? 10 a.m.?
That works for us, Your Honor.
All right. Anything else for today?
Your Honor, maybe, I've heard the court say this several times in a different fashion. We are not binding the court to any specific sentence, and the court retains its right to sentence as it sees fit. I just mentioned that this is not a Rule 11 plea, but although it's a stipulated statement of defendant.
Counsel approach, please.
Hildebrandt was charged with 6 counts of aggravated child abuse. She surrendered her license as a counselor pending resolution of the court case and a disciplinary investigation. On December 27, 2023, Jody pled guilty to 4 counts of aggravated child.
All rise. If the court in Washington County, State of Utah is now in session, the Honorable John J. Walton presiding. You may be seated.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to District Court. We are here this morning in the matter of State of Utah versus Jody Hildebrandt, case 231501763. Mr. Clark and Mr. Shum are here representing the state of Utah, and Mr. Terry is here with Ms. Hildebrandt. We are scheduled for a waiver of preliminary hearing. Mr. Terry, appears you have just handed the court a signed plea agreement.
That is correct, Your Honor. With respect to the waiver, Ms. Hildebrandt, we have had discussions. She fully understands the purpose of a preliminary hearing, what the burden of proof would be, and that she has the right to a preliminary hearing, but in conjunction with the entry of her plea today, we waive the preliminary hearing.
And in fact, there is a provision in the written plea agreement that operates as a waiver of a preliminary hearing. All right. Ms. Hildebrandt, I've been handed a written document, a plea agreement with your signature on it. Did you sign that document? And you did that to represent to the court that you read the document carefully, that you understand what you've read, that you agree to all of the terms that are set forth in that written document?
Yes.
You had sufficient time to ask Mr. Terry any questions that you have about the agreement or its potential effect?
Yes.
Is anyone pressuring you to enter into this agreement, or is anyone promising you anything that I haven't been told about or that is not in the written document?
No.
Are you under the influence of alcohol or drugs today? Is there anything today that could interfere in any way with your ability to understand the agreement or its potential consequences?
No.
No physical condition, mental health, or emotional condition, nothing that could interfere with your present ability to evaluate the agreement and decide if it's what you're prepared to do today.
No.
You don't need more time, you're ready to go.
Yes.
Any further record, counsel?
Your Honor, the agreement contains a factual basis. There are a few details in the factual basis that we are not in full agreement with. However, this is a guilty plea. It is not an outward plea. The factual basis sets forth facts that we agree with, that Ms. Hildebrandt agrees with. They're sufficient for the court to accept her plea with respect to the 4 counts to which she is pleading guilty. And so we ask the court to accept her plea.
And apart from what is in the written factual basis in the plea agreement, you have, I'm assuming, reviewed voluminous discovery. You don't dispute whether there is an actual or an adequate factual basis.
We do not.
All right, then. Anything else before the court receives Ms. Hildebrandt's pleas?
No, Your Honor.
Nothing to say now. Then, Ms. Hildebrandt, how do you plead to count 1, aggravated child abuse, a second-degree felony? And to count 3, aggravated child abuse, a second-degree felony? To count 5, aggravated child abuse, a second-degree felony? And to count 6, also aggravated child abuse, a second-degree felony? The court finds that there is a sufficient factual basis. The court, in addition, finds that Ms. Hildebrandt's pleas are made knowingly and voluntarily. The court therefore accepts and enters those pleas, dismisses the remaining 2 counts. We are anticipating a PSI, although part of the plea agreement appears to be that Ms. Hildebrandt will not contest a prison sentence. Is that right?
That is correct. But we are asking for a please.
All right. And the court orders the preparation of a pre-sentence investigation report and set sentencing at 10:30 a.m. on February 20th. Anything else for today, counsel?
Nothing much.
All right. Thank you. We'll be recessed.
Thank you.
On February 20th, 2024, Ruby Franke was sentenced to 4 1 to 15-year terms in prison by a Utah district court on Tuesday, ending a months-long child case brought against the mother of 6.
We're here for sentencing in the matter of State of Utah versus Ruby Franke. Ms. Franke is here with Mr. Windward. Mr. Clark and Mr. Sham are here for the State of Utah, and we are ready to proceed with sentencing.
We are.
Yes, Your Honor. Counsel, the terms of the sentence were agreed to as part of the plea agreement, correct?
That is correct.
There is a pre-sentence investigation report in the matter. I have reviewed that. Everyone has seen it.
Yes.
What about restitution, counsel, before we move on with other matters?
We'd like to leave that open at this time, Your Honor. I can get into that. I might be more comfortable if we approach to get into that.
Is there an agreement that restitution, that we reserve that, and for what period of time?
8 months is what we're anticipating. But I haven't talked to the defendant's counsel about that.
We haven't discussed that, Your Honor.
Is there any objection?
No.
All right. What's the state's position regarding sentencing?
Your Honor, the state, I'll stand up. The state respectfully requests that the court sentence Ms. Franke to consecutive prison terms for each of the 4 counts of aggravated child abuse. This sentence was agreed to by Ms. Franke in her plea agreement and is also recommended by Idaho Probation and Parole. She committed horrible acts of child abuse. From May to August in 2023, Ms. Franke and her business partner held her 2 children, ages 9 and 11, turning 12, in a concentration camp-like setting. The children were regularly denied food, water, beds to sleep in, and virtually all forms of entertainment. They were isolated from others and were hidden when people came to visit the house where the children and the defendants were staying. The children were forced to do physical tasks like carrying loaded boxes up and down stairs and wall sits or sitting against a wall without a chair or a stool for hours at a time. They were also forced to do manual labor outdoors in the extreme summer heat, at times without shoes or socks. They were forced to stand outside on a cement patio in the summer heat for hours and even days at a time. They were beaten, and the 12-year-old was regularly bound hand and foot after he attempted to run away in mid-July. Both children had extensive physical injuries from the abuse that required hospitalization when they were found. The injuries from the binding to the 12-year-old are particularly awful. In addition to physical abuse, the children were emotionally abused to the extent that each believed, to some degree, that they deserved what was being done to them. Had the older of the children not had the courage to run away and ask a neighbor to call the police, heaven only knows how much longer he could have survived in that situation. After being caught, Ms. Franke has shown considerable remorse, as evidenced by agreeing to serve consecutive prison terms and being willing to cooperate with the state against Ms. Hildebrandt. However, given the severity of the abuse she inflicted, consecutive terms are appropriate in this case. As the court's aware, Section 76-3401 lays out factors the court takes into account in determining whether consecutive or concurrent sentences should be imposed. Those factors are the gravity and circumstances of the offense, the number of victims, and the history, character, and rehabilitative needs of the defendant. As agreed to in the plea agreement and as recommended by Idaho Probation and Parole, consecutive sentences are appropriate. This is due to the severity of the abuse to both victims. It could be argued that Ms. Franke should receive a lesser sentence than Ms. Hildebrandt because of her remorse and willingness to cooperate with the state. However, the Board of Pardons and Parole will have broad latitude and will be able to take those facts into account when it determines how long each of the co-defendants will remain incarcerated. In conclusion, we respectfully request that the court go along with what was agreed to in the plea agreement and is recommended by probation and parole and impose consecutive sentences.
Thank you. Anything else from the state?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Windward?
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning. In my few comments this morning, and in the comments my client wishes to make in a few minutes, we are not suggesting nor are we asking that the court deviate from the stipulated sentence contained in the written plea agreement. I want the court to know that through introspection and reflection, Ruby Franke has become a serious student of her own actions. In the very early days of my involvement with Ruby, she was somewhat defensive, and she was still very much indoctrinated into a philosophy that was destructive. Fortunately, Ruby came to the stark realization of the errors in her thinking patterns and subsequent actions. To say that she was horrified by this realization would be to put it mildly. I have marveled at how quickly Ruby abandoned her defensive stance and moved toward her total acceptance of her actions and to her sentence today. So far, she has used her time in jail to unwrap the layers upon layers of deceit and deception foisted upon her over the last 4 years by an unscrupulous individual. Ruby realizes that she still has work to do in shedding those thinking errors and to reestablish a better and correct pattern of thinking and behavior. Ruby realizes that changing her thinking, reestablishing relationships, and healing are not simple or easy tasks. However, she is committed to doing that work. I would like the court to know that Ruby Franke is a delightful, respectful, and responsible person. She is open to feedback and addressing the consequences of her actions head on, and now ready to address your honor and accept your judgment. Thank you, Judge Walton.
Thank you. Ms. Franke has a statement she'd like to make.
She does.
Judge Walton.
You don't have to bend down.
Okay. Thank you. I would like to make a statement without any intent to change my stipulated sentence. For the past 4 years, I've chosen to follow counsel and guidance that has led me into a dark delusion. My distorted version of reality went largely unchecked as I would isolate from anyone who challenged me. I was led to believe that this world was an evil place, filled with cops who control, hospitals that injure, government agencies that brainwash, church leaders who lie and lust, husbands who refuse to protect, and children who need abused. My choice to believe and behave this paranoia culminated into criminal activity for which I stand before you today ready to take accountability. Jody Hildebrandt was never my business partner, nor was I ever employed by her. I have never received wages from her or connections. Jody was employed as my son's counselor in 2019, and in 2020 I paid her to be my mentor. It is important to me to demonstrate my remorse and regret without blame. I take full accountability for my choices, and it is my preference that I serve a prison sentence. Thank you to the officers in Santa Clara and the Ivan City Police, Nick Howman, Brian Palufo, Cy Pitkevit, Mike Pondoyo in Tobler, John Ward, Dee Lewis, and Chief Flowers. You were the angels who came and saved my children. I especially want to thank Detective Jay Bate. She plucked me out of a situation I didn't know how to get out of. And the moment she handcuffed me was the moment I gained my freedom. You were not the controlling ones. I was. Thank you to the medical staff at Intermountain Hospital. Your skill, tenderness, and professionalism helped heal my children. Jody and I inflicted the injuries, not the hospital. Thank you to DCFS the Children's Justice Center, Judge Basil, and other key adults, you've gathered my children under your wing and offered them love, compassion, encouragement. You were not the ones who were doing the brainwashing. Thank you to my Bishop Tom Hawks and my state president Jim Nelson for reminding me of the Lord's love for the lost. So much pain and suffering would have been avoided had I followed and heeded your counsel. I was the one who was deceived, not you. Thank you to the Washington County Prosecutor's Office, Ryan Sham, the legal assistants and discovery clerks. Eric Clark, you exemplified to me how justice and mercy are meant to coexist. My charges are just. They offer safety to my family, accountability to the public, and they did show mercy to me. Thank you to my attorney Lamar Winward and his staff. I would not be where I am today without them. Thank you to Randy Kester for your limitless energy in healing my family. My dear friends, Pam and Roy, I'm so sorry for letting you down. Because of your association with me, your innocence was called into question. My mother-in-law, father-in-law, Kevin's family, my cousins, aunts, uncles, nieces, nephews, and neighbors, you all saw the warning signs long before I did, and you did what you could. You wanted to help, but I pushed you away. My mother and father, I have been utterly wretched to you. You have offered me unconditional love, and for that I have offered you unconditional contempt. My siblings and their spouses, because of my decision to roll around in a pigsty, I've dragged your families through the mud in public. Yet, when I desired to return as the prodigal sister, unlike the prodigal's brother in the Bible, you synced step with my parents and ran out to greet me. Your capacity to love is unprecedented. Kevin, my husband of more than 23 years, you are the love of my life. I'm so sorry to leave to you to finish what we both started together. The ending of our marriage is a tragedy. And you are wrapped around my heart in a knot I'll never be able to undo. To my babies, my 6 little chicks, you were part of me. I was the mama duck who was consistently watering you to safety. I can see now over the past 4 years I was in a deep undercurrent that led us to danger. I never went into darkness knowingly. I was so disoriented that I believed dark was light and light was wrong. I would do anything in this world for you. My willingness to sacrifice all for you was masterfully manipulated into something very ugly. I took from her all that was soft and safe and good. I took from her a mother. How terrifying this must have been for you. I'll never stop crying for hurting your tender souls. You're so precious to me. I'm sorry. My choice to live in fear of the world has created a great vulnerability and a blind spot for me, where I have broken hearts and I've caused people to suffer and I have betrayed sacred trust. Watching my community respond to my charges with justice and mercy and grace and love is all the more evidence to me of how wrong I've been. This world is full of really good people. And finally, I'm sorry for twisting God's word and distorting his doctrines. My greatest desire is to stand in his court someday spotless and confident. And Judge Walton, I know that standing before you today is a necessary step towards that end. Thank you to you and your staff for facilitating my opportunity to take accountability and to answer for my charges. I am humbled and willing to serve a prison sentence as long as it takes to continue unraveling all of the disinformation I have believed and bought, swallowed, and acted out, and for my family to heal and for the community to heal. And I understand this is going to take time. I'm committed to continuing my learning until all of my toxic layers are shed, and I am ready to re-enter as a contributing member of our beautiful society. Thank you, Judge Walton.
Thank you for your statement, Ms. Franke. Anything else, Mr. Winward?
No, Your Honor.
Anything else prior to the court imposing sentence?
No, Your Honor.
The sentence will be that Ms. Franke serve 4 counts, 4 1 to 15-year sentences based on her convictions for 4 counts of aggravated child abuse. Again, they will be served consecutively pursuant to the parties' agreement and the applicable statute. Under the applicable statute, the court finds that that consecutive sentences are appropriate. Ms. Franke, the last thing I do need to tell you is that you have only 30 days to file or to perfect an appeal of any errors of the court by filing a written notice of appeal with the clerk of the court. If you don't do that within 30 days, you will lose your right to appeal. You also have the right to the assistance of an attorney on appeal and to have one appointed if you cannot afford to hire your own. Restitution, as agreed by the parties, will remain open for a period of 8 months. Any of the parties can bring that matter back before the court within that period of time. Anything else?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you. The next matter before the court is State of Utah versus Hildebrandt, case 231501763.
Frank's business partner, Jody Hildebrandt, was also sentenced on February 20, 2024 to 4 1 to 15-year prison terms. Both women will serve their sentences consecutively.
Court recalls the matter of State of Utah versus Hildebrandt, case 231501763. Counsel are present. Ms. Hildebrandt is present. Counsel, there is a pre-sentence investigation report. I have read it. Everyone has seen and reviewed that.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Again, the sentence was stipulated at the time of the plea agreement. What record do we need to make other than going forward with sentencing?
Your Honor, it would be repetitive. I had the same statement just with the last few paragraphs where I was differentiating between Ms. Franke and Ms. Hildebrandt.
Okay, let's talk about housekeeping matters first. What about restitution?
We've stipulated to keep that open for 8 months.
It is appropriate, Your Honor, since we don't have any evidence with respect to restitution, and that's because it is still in the process of being gathered by the county attorney's office. It's completely appropriate for the court to make no orders with respect to restitution other than to reserve all issues regarding restitution, and we have no issue with the eight-month time frame.
And the injunction that was previously issued by the court will remain in effect?
It will.
At least until that time?
It will remain in effect until further order of this court.
All right. Mr. Clark?
Thanks, Your Honor. The State of Utah respectfully requests that the court sentence Ms. Hildebrandt to consecutive prison terms for each of the 4 counts of aggravated child abuse to which she has pleaded guilty. The sentence was agreed to her in her plea agreement and is also recommended by adult probation and parole. Ms. Hildebrandt committed awful acts of child abuse. From May to August 2023, she and her business partner held 2 children, ages 9 and 11, turning 12, in a concentration camp-like setting in her house in Ivan City. The children were regularly denied food, water, beds to sleep in, and virtually all forms of entertainment. They were isolated from others and were hidden when people came to visit the house. They were forced to do physical tasks like carrying loaded boxes up and down stairs and doing wall sits or sitting against a wall without assistance of a chair or stool for hours at a time. They were forced to do manual labor outdoors in the extreme summer heat, often without shoes or socks. They were also forced to stand outside on a cement patio in the summer heat for hours and even days. They were beaten, and the 12-year-old was regularly bound hand and foot after he attempted to run away in mid-July. Both children had extensive physical injuries from the abuse that required hospitalization to treat. The injuries from the binding are particularly bad. In addition to the physical abuse, the children were emotionally abused. They each believed to some degree that they deserved what was being done to them. Had the older of the two children not had the courage to run away and ask a neighbor to call the police, heaven only knows how much longer he could have survived. After being caught, Ms. Hildebrandt has shown little to no remorse for her actions. In telephone conversations that will be provided in full to the Board of Pardons and Parole, and which she knew to be recorded, she's repeatedly claimed that she is the victim and the children are the perpetrators.
This is a call from and paid for by
Jody Hildebrandt,
an inmate at Purgatory Correctional Facility. This call is subject to recording and monitoring. If you don't wish to talk, hang up now. Thank you for using Telmate.
Are you there?
Yeah. Yep, there you are.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so the Lord says that first they'll lay their hands on you and persecute you, delivering you up to the synagogues and into prisons, being brought before kings and rulers for my name's sake. And it shall turn to you for a testimony. And then he says, settle it therefore in your hearts not to meditate before what ye shall answer, for I will give you a mouth and wisdom, which all your adversaries shall not be able to gainsay or resist. And you know what gainsay means?
Wow.
So then he says, and ye shall be betrayed by both parents and brethren and kinsfolk and friends. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's exactly what's going on. And some of you shall be caused to be put to death, and you shall be hated by all men for my name's sake. And then he goes on to say, you know, and I've read that before, but like I've never been in prison. But I just read that. Yeah. I just wept. I mean, the Spirit was like, he just said, "This is you."
Yeah.
I read in Mark. So that was in Luke, and I read in Mark the same kind of thing, you know, because the Gospels they wrote similarly. So he said, now the brother shall betray the brother to death, and the father the son, like the father will betray the son, and the children shall rise up against their parents and shall cause them to be put to death. That statement right there is what's going on with me. The children shall rise up and put their parents to death, and ye shall be hated of all men for my name's sake.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
I probably cried for an hour straight. Just everything clicked, and I said, I'm happy to go to prison. Because if you continue to read the rest of the chapter, he's like, be grateful. If you're in this situation, be grateful because you're
grateful.
And you will be saved. And
wow, yeah, that's quite an experience to read that from your perspective right now. You know, wow.
Well, I have just been begging him, like, you've got to explain this to me. Like, I cannot logically figure out what's going on here. And that's it. That's what's going on. And the Spirit. Yeah. I mean, when I feel the Spirit, I have two physiological reactions. I get really like shaky, like I'm shivering, like I'm cold, or I feel heat, like I have a fever run through me.
Yeah. Wow.
And I was like burning up. It felt like I was burning up, and I was just shaking with gratitude. Like, Here's your answer. Here's what this is.
That's super cool.
And
that's pretty neat. Okay. Pretty neat how that works, how the scriptures can do that, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Well, I have, like I said, I have probably every single day just been, trying to logic, trying to understand, trying to be humble, trying to say,
yeah, sure. Yeah.
What's happening?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You're living a puzzle, trying to put the pieces together. Just. Yeah.
Yeah. And in Peter, First Peter, I don't have this one written down. I kind of wrote the other stuff down, so I took it down to the phone. But in First Peter, chapter 4, between verses 12 and 19, I can't remember exactly how he says it, but he's like, when you have something happen to you and it just feels like it's random, it's not random. Like this is intentional. You're it's not just some crazy act of events that's going on. This is like intentional. And that First Peter chapter 4 was another one of the footnotes to refer to, that reinforced all this other stuff. And I'm like, wow, this isn't just some crazy random event. Like, this has purpose.
Right.
And then I connected it to my blessing, because my blessing I've been reading like several times a day, and the blessing is pretty clear. The first paragraph of it says, these are words directly to you from your Heavenly Father, and according to your faith and diligence, they'll either be a comfort to you or they won't be. So however much diligence and faith you want to put in them. And then the next paragraph talks about, it says, you are a special spirit, chosen and reserved for these last days and sent forth to the earth in great clouds of glory to share the gospel and prepare the people for the return of the Savior. And then it says, one of the reasons you were sent here is to share the gospel. The strongest message you will ever teach is the power of your example. And then he says, through the power of your example in the spoken word, he says, your tongue will be loosed, and you will be able to teach the gospel in far and distant nations. And then he says, through the power of your example and the spoken word, you will be a great tool in the hand of the Lord in teaching the gospel to many. So the whole paragraph about an example, I'm like, well, what's a better example than to go to prison unjustly and then go teach the gospel? Go teach the gospel. Plan on doing it.
Yeah, and that's super cool. That lady that's Jewish that you've met, and what a neat thing.
Yeah.
Be able to share with her.
I was almost done. I had a guy from a ward that I was at their ward. He came over and he gave me a blessing, and he told me probably about 2 months ago. He said, he doesn't know anything about me. He doesn't know about what I do for a living or anything. And he goes, what you've been doing is going to change. You're going to be teaching differently in the next little while.
Wow.
Like, what in the world? I mean, Ryan, I know this sounds crazy, and I still can't put my finger on why it feels this way, but it feels like I was being set up to end up here.
Oh, my heavens.
I know that sounds bizarro. I mean, I should be here. I haven't done anything wrong.
Right, but my goodness.
You have 1 minute remaining for this call.
Run out of time.
But it was like everything got taken out of the house, and it's in a storage unit so that I could come to jail. It sounds crazy, but it really feels that way. And I don't know if I'm going to be like some kind of example, but when I get out of here, I have a story to tell, and I am going to try to do everything I can to protect the children, because that's what's happening, is that kids are being horribly abused.
Yeah, absolutely.
And instead of the kids, anyways, it's a story, but when you come on about it.
Yeah. Okay, so
She's gone so far as to say that the things said in this proceeding and covered by the media today will be full of lies. The combination of three factors make Ms. Hildebrand a significant threat to the community. First, the severity of the abuse she caused to be inflicted on young children. Second, her attitude that everything she did was justified and that she is being wrongfully imprisoned. And third, her training as a therapist and aptitude for using online resources to convince others to follow her guidance. Utah Code Section 76-3401 lays out three factors the court should consider in determining whether to impose concurrent or consecutive sentences. The first is the gravity and circumstances of the offense. The second is the number of victims. And the third is the history, character, and rehabilitative need of the defendant. As agreed to in the plea agreement and as recommended by adult probation and parole, consecutive sentences are appropriate here. This is due to the severity of the abuse to the two victims and the extreme need for Ms. Hildebrand to be rehabilitated so that she no longer will present a risk to the community. The state respectfully requests that she be sentenced to 4 consecutive terms.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. Mr. Terry?
Thank you, Your Honor. I will be brief. As is always the case in cases that come before courts, there are two sides to every case. And even in a case like this, that remains the case. There are many allegations regarding these two individuals, Ms. Frankie and my client, Ms. Hildebrand. The only facts in this case that are adjudicated facts are those set forth in the plea agreement that she entered into freely and knowingly and voluntarily. Those facts, those adjudicated facts, are significant. They certainly provide a basis for the pleas and provide a basis for the stipulated sentence in this case. My experience with Ms. Hildebrand is that she is not the person that she has been portrayed to be. But having said that, she has accepted responsibility in this case. She has entered into this plea agreement with a stipulated sentence of 4 consecutive sentences. She did that at the time she entered into the plea agreement, knowing that that would be the court's order. She is before the court today knowing that that will be the court's order, and she fully accepts that. She accepts responsibility and she accepts the consequences for her conduct. And we will submit it to the court on the stipulated agreement.
Mr. Terry, you suggested that there are two sides to every case. I generally agree with you. Ms. Hildebrand didn't make a statement to AP&P in the course of the pre-sentence investigation report.
Correct.
Why did she not make a statement?
She wanted to reserve her right to make a statement before the court today, and she has a brief statement that she wants to read, Your Honor.
Okay.
And
all right. Ms. Hildebrand? Go ahead.
I sincerely love these children. I desire for them to heal physically and emotionally. One of the reasons I did not go to trial is that I did not want them to emotionally relive the experience which would have been detrimental to them. My hope and prayer is that they will heal and move forward to have beautiful lives. I am willing to submit to what the state feels would be an appropriate amount of time served to make retribution as an outcome.
And in answer to your question, Your Honor, I knew that whatever she might say to the author of the pre-sentence report would probably sound hollow and self-serving, and perhaps it does today. But I know that my client, in the statement that she makes to the court today, that statement is absolutely sincere.
Does Ms. Hildebrand recognize that it's her behavior that caused the harm to the children that she's referred to in her statement?
Your Honor, she recognizes that she was along with Miss Frankie, that she made decisions with respect to the discipline of those children that were wrong, that caused harm to those children. She fully recognizes that and accepts responsibility for that.
All right. Anything else?
No, Your Honor. No, Your Honor.
Okay. Ms. Hildebrandt, this circumstance is tragic. It's largely, of course, of your making. By any measure, your conduct in this case was disastrous for these children. Adults are supposed to protect children. Adults with specialized training in particular are supposed to protect children. You didn't do that in this case. In this case, you terrorized children, and the results have been tragic. It's what happened to these children, and your philosophy in dealing with them, frankly, seems detached from reality or any objective standard of decency or even common sense. And the court finds that it is appropriate that you serve a prison sentence. The court finds under the statute, Utah Code 76-3-401, that given the gravity and circumstances of the offenses, the number of victims, and the history and character and needs of the defendant, that consecutive sentences are appropriate. The court imposes 4 1 to 15-year sentences to be again served consecutively for each of the 4 counts of aggravated child abuse. The last thing I do need to tell you is that you only have 30 days to file or perfect an appeal of any error of the court by filing a written notice of appeal with the clerk of the court. If you don't do that, you will lose your right to appeal. That has to be filed in writing and again within 30 days. You also have the right to the assistance of an attorney and to have an attorney appointed if you cannot afford to hire your own. Thank you. We're in recess.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thanks, John.
Prison sentences in Utah are indeterminate, with a minimum and maximum time frame. The offender must serve the whole sentence unless the Board of Pardons releases them sooner. However, under Utah law, consecutive sentences cannot run beyond 30 years unless the offender has a maximum term of life. I would like to take a moment to say welcome to all of my new subscribers. Welcome to the channel. Guys, please support the channel by giving us a like, and if you want to see more videos like this one, be sure to subscribe. Set your notifications to all so that you're notified when I go live or add new content. I am contemplating doing a part 3 to this case, but that will depend on the overall response I get from parts 1 and 2. You guys tell me, would you like to see a part 3? Thanks for watching, liking, and sharing.